Good morning and good evening, viewers from around the world, wherever you're joining me from. This is Bolakum from Akumdit Studio, Charlotte, North Carolina, live in Washington, D.C. On a special mission in Washington to cover the arrival of Ambassador Garang Diing to the White House, meeting President Obama Monday. And we'll also have a chance to get to meet Ambassador Backwell and the people of Washington, D.C. in general. Say welcome to Washington, D.C.
Thank you.
I heard that you had a chance today to speak with President Obama in the White House on your appointment. What did you and him talk about concerning your presence here in the United States?
Yeah, thank you very much. Indeed, I had the opportunity to meet Mr. Barack Obama, the President of the United States of America, today, whereby I presented my credentials as South Sudan Ambassador to the United States of America, appointed by His Excellency President Salva Kiir Mayardit. The President welcomed me as South Sudan Ambassador, and he wished me good stay in Washington, as well as wishing me good working relationship with his administration.
That's great. Also realize that you come from South Sudan and there's so much expectation from the diasporas and as well as people of South Sudan in general, expecting that your presence here would create a good bilateral relationship with the United States. What message of hope or courage would you probably want to tell people back in South Sudan, as well as people in the United States and elsewhere around the globe that are going to be watching this exclusive interview with you?
Yeah, thank you very much. Before answering that question, let me say that in my meeting with the President today, I conveyed to him regards from His Excellency President Salva Kiir Mayardit, and also reiteration of Mr. President Salva Kiir Mayardit that he is committed to work for peace and bringing peace to South Sudan at the earliest possible time. That is first priority now. So the government of South Sudan and the President of the Republic of South Sudan is committed to bringing peace to South Sudan very soon. The U.S. President expressed his desire and hope to work with President Kiir in bringing peace to South Sudan. This is the messages that we have shared today. The second is that being here in the United States as the ambassador, I would like also to share with our community in the United States the message of hope that the President has sent to them, that is committed to peace and bringing peace to South Sudan very soon. That is top priority. And to bring peace in South Sudan, it needs collaboration, cooperation of all of us in diaspora and at home, that all of us should work for peace and be talking peace, and our message should be one message, and that is we need peace in South Sudan. We need also to explain the dynamics of the conflict in South Sudan, that it is not a tribal conflict, it is a political conflict that needs political solution. And the president is committed to that, and the government is committed to that. So my message to diaspora here in the U.S. is that currently the two parties to the conflict in South Sudan are negotiating peace in South Sudan. A lot of issues have been ironed out. Now remains only a few issues. Among them is the issue of power sharing, which we think that is going to be ironed out in the few coming days. So there is already a timetable for reaching peace in South Sudan, and that by the 5th of March, according to the scheduled program that has been made and given to the partners in the peace process, by the 5th of March, hopefully all of us will be embracing peace in South Sudan.
That's great. Thank you so much, Mr.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mariama. I arrived on 11th last month, and I was able to meet the President Obama on 23rd of last month. And the meeting went on well. The President received me cordially. He expressed his willingness to work with me and President Salva Kiir to achieve peace in South Sudan. One important message that he gave me to relate to my leadership in South Sudan is that South Sudan has seen a lot of destruction and bloodshed, and therefore the leaders of South Sudan have to rise above the issues and reach peace in the nearest possible time. I also relate to the President Obama the willingness of my President Salva Kiir Mayardit to resolve this issue of fighting in South Sudan and to reach peace agreement as soon as possible.
Well, speaking of the peace agreements, all eyes are on Ethiopia, on the Ethiopian capital, Addis Ababa. With the peace talks taking place, we know that the two leaders have met, but no agreement yet. What are you hearing, and do you think a peace deal will be signed?
Yeah, we are still in the specified time in which to sign peace agreement. So up to this moment, there are still sticking issues, and the two leaders were meeting to the late hours to try to resolve these issues. And hopefully, before the 5th, the people of South Sudan will receive the news that peace has been agreed in Addis Ababa.
What do you think right now is the biggest hurdle? Because I know that there are a lot of issues, and I'm just going to go through them real quick. Issues like government structures, power sharing percentage, army coexistence, or recomposition of the National Assembly. Is it one issue that they're not agreeing on, or is it all the issues above?
I think there has been a progress that has been made on different fronts, especially on the economic fronts. But now it remains the issues that are in the governance area. And the government, led by the President Salva Kiir, has given a lot of concessions in these areas. The rebels' side is putting very difficult conditions on the government. From the government side, we think that the issue of the two armies can be discussed, we can reach agreement. But secondly, the issue of the vice president, I think Riek Machar was a vice president before he left, before he tried to make a coup. So our position and the position of the president has been that he is comfortable by having two vice presidents with equal powers. With the parliament issue, we think that it is an elected parliament, therefore nobody has power to dissolve it. What the government can do is to enlarge the parliament in order to incorporate the rebels and other groups.
Well, there's another issue where people talk about that there have been a lot of peace deals and that have not been respected. And even if there is a peace deal that comes out of these talks between Riek Machar and Salva Kiir, the problems go deeper in South Sudan, that there's a lot of division between so many different groups. What kind of mechanism do you think are being set up by the government right now for some kind of a reconciliation between the South Sudanese people?
First of all is to reach agreement and to trust each other. because they are the parties that will be in charge with the implementation of the agreement. Secondly, there will be a mechanism, be it a regional mechanism or international mechanism, to monitor the compliance of the two parties or any other party to the agreement. The issues of reconciliation will come when the peace is signed, because you cannot reconcile people when they are still fighting. Calm the situation down and then talk about the reconciliation. The government is ready to sponsor the reconciliation. The government is ready to participate in the reconciliation process. And we had that experience. We committed ourselves to the CPA, and that is why we did not go back to war with Sudan, because we were committed to agreements that we signed. It is the rebels that we thought that they would be committed to the agreement, because there are a lot of splintering groups that are coming out of the rebels. And the rebels need to unify their ranks and their forces so that they are a formidable force to negotiate with one voice with the government, which is now standing unified, solid, negotiating peace with the rebels.
If an agreement doesn't come out of the peace talks, is there a plan B? What's next for South Sudan?
The plan B that we would like to initiate as a government is to continue in the peace process, continue to implement the agreements that have been signed, continue to abide by the ceasefire agreements that have been signed. This is the plan B. But to go back to plan B that will destroy South Sudan more, displace people more, misuse the resources more, that is not a good plan B. But we cannot read the minds of the rebels what their plan Bs are.
We've just heard about possible sanctions from the United Nations, and I actually want to get your reaction, just about the adoption of this resolution.
We are very, very disappointed as a government. We are very dismayed by these sanctions, because we think that sanctions will not resolve any problem in South Sudan. Instead, it will aggravate the situation more. Also, sanctions will send a wrong signal to the rebels that there is somebody somewhere that is holding the hands and the legs of the government, and they are allowed to beat the government by any means. We have tried to talk and engage with the Americans, who are the sponsors of the sanctions, to express our view that sanctions will not solve any problem in South Sudan. Instead, keep engaging the parties as it used to do during the Naivasha agreement. And I think the United States has a moral obligation to continue to support South Sudan, continue to support any peace and reconciliation in South Sudan, because South Sudan is a brainchild of the United States and other friends in Europe and elsewhere in the world.
That vote at the UN was a unanimous vote, so I guess it wasn't just the United States, it was also other parties who want to kind of send a signal. Let me ask you very quickly, before I let you go, about a report. Recently, UNICEF talked about children being kidnapped in certain parts of South Sudan. And the organization says it's confident that the armed group which took the children is from this militia, the Shilluk militia, under the control of Johnson Maloney, is usually aligned with your government. What do you make of that?
The government has come out clearly and stated its position that it will look into the matter and resolve. There is no way that the government can abduct children, because thousands of millions of children are under government control, under government sponsors in schools and the universities. Why would the government go to any village and abduct children? So we think that as government, if it has been done by our forces, we think that it is not a good action to be done, and I think the government can correct the issue if it is on its side. The difficulty will be if it is on the rebel side, because we don't know who will the rebel will hold accountable to such the action. So it is an issue that needs to be investigated thoroughly, both by the government and the organizations such as UNICEF.
We've been concentrated on the peace talks. We've talked about, this problem has been going on for almost 15 months, and it has had a toll, a huge toll, a humanitarian toll on the country. But on the other side, there's also economics, and how is it affecting the South Sudanese economy? How does South Sudan plan to bounce back?
Yes, it has affected the South Sudan as a country. It has affected the regions. The oil production has not gone to zero, but it has reduced. It has affected trade between the countries. South Sudan used to export and some hard currency, and some of the regions had access to the hard currency through trade with South Sudan. Even the exports to South Sudan have dropped. A country like Uganda and Kenya used to export to South Sudan. Farmers there have suffered, for instance, in those countries, because their produce are there and there is no market for them. Even our development partners, like the Chinese, the Malaysians, who are producing the oil, have also been affected because their investment is in danger if it has not reduced as well.
So if you had the world in front of you today, what would you ask for?
Peace, the most precious thing that we need and everybody needs in the world. Peace. Help us to bring peace. This is the most important thing. Other things will be preconditions upon peace. If the peace comes, people will go normal with their life. They can produce, they can travel, they can give birth peacefully. This is very, very important. So if the well is there watching, what we need is help us to bring peace to South Sudan as soon as possible.
To step up pressure on the warring factions in South Sudan, the UN Security Council adopted a resolution on Tuesday to possibly impose sanctions if a deal is not reached by Thursday, March the 5th. The unanimously adopted resolution drafted by the United States threatens to blacklist anyone undermining security or interfering with the peace process after Thursday. The resolution says future UN sanctions could include both an arms embargo and the blacklisting of individuals. U.S. officials say they want to take an incremental approach and gradually increase pressure on the warring factions. Speaking to VOA, South Sudanese ambassador to the United States, Garang Diing Akuong, was critical of the sanctions.
We have tried to talk and engage with the Americans, who are the sponsors of the sanctions, to express our view that sanctions will not solve any problem in South Sudan. Instead, keep engaging the parties as it used to do during the Naivasha agreement. And I think the United States has a moral obligation to continue to support South Sudan, continue to support any peace and reconciliation in South Sudan, because South Sudan is a brainchild of the United States and other friends in Europe and elsewhere in the world. So we are not happy with the sanctions. We will continue to object to sanctions.
Today on Straight Talk Africa, the South Sudan peace process collapsed last week. This following an international deadline on March 5th. Observers insist the two principals must set aside their differences and end the conflict. That's coming up next right here on Straight Talk Africa. Hello, welcome to Straight Talk Africa. It's Wednesday, March 11th. I am Shaka Sali.
And hello, Shaka, and hello to all our viewers and listeners on the continent and elsewhere. I'm Mariama Diallo, your social media reporter.
Today, we'll talk about the implications of the stalled South Sudan peace talks in the Ethiopian capital of Addis Ababa.
We have a lot to delve into on today's program. Coming up later in our STA inbox, we'll share some thoughts from our audience who sent in emails, Facebook, and Twitter comments. We'll reveal some of them ahead on Straight Talk Africa.
But first, the people of South Sudan continue to suffer greatly due to the ongoing political turmoil and violence brought about by the government and the rebel group, SPLM, in opposition. My colleague, Paul Cisco, has more. Sorry for the technical difficulties, and now joining us here in our Washington studios are two distinguished guests. Garang Diing Akuong, the South Sudanese ambassador to the United States. I have to say frankly, Ambassador Garang, that I'm profoundly honored and exceedingly humbled to have the opportunity to host you for the first time on Straight Talk Africa.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be on your show and happy to your listeners and viewers.
It's a pleasure. And of course, Johnny Tanza Mabusu, managing editor and host of South Sudan in Focus, the voice of America's 30-minute weekly English language to Africa. It's a pleasure, of course, having you again.
Thank you, Shaka. It's always a pleasure to be
Africa.
on this show.
Well, I gather that we can now go for the package. So the people of South Sudan continue to suffer greatly due to the ongoing political turmoil and violence brought about by the government and the rebel group SPLM in opposition. My colleague Paul Cisco has more.
For many South Sudanese citizens, any signs of hope for peace in the world's youngest nation were again dashed after talks between President Salva Kiir and his longtime rival Riek Machar collapsed in Addis Ababa without a deal. Political discord between the two leaders has brought ethnic violence, and now there appears to be no resolution to the standoff in sight. A leaked African Union document says a transitional government is needed in South Sudan, and that neither Kiir or Machar should serve in it, reportedly because of their alleged responsibility for the, quote, organized massacres and large-scale violence, end quote. South Sudanese rebel leader and former Vice President Riek Machar says the government is not willing to change its position.
We have done our best to arrive to a peace agreement, but it has not become possible because the positions being presented by the government.
President Salva Kiir had little comment.
I have no comment.
Michael McQuay, a spokesperson for the government of South Sudan, denies that the talks were a major setback.
I don't agree with the conclusion that the talks have failed, but we say we are suspending the talks for further consultations.
Sayoum Mesfin is chief mediator for the Intergovernmental Authority on Development.
The level of damage of confidence, the level of mistrust that you see between these leaders is unbelievable. And they have not been able to overcome this, to forgive with each other and execute their people by cutting a deal and an agreement to transform the country into a peaceful one ruled by constitutional rules.
UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon expressed profound disappointment at the talks' conclusion, and the U.S. State Department strongly condemned the lack of political leadership to resolve this man-made conflict. Earlier, the UN Security Council adopted a resolution to impose limited sanctions on South Sudan. U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Samantha Power.
Those who frustrate peace must begin to pay the price.
More peace talks are expected, but no date has been scheduled. Meanwhile, the death toll is mounting. Over 10,000 people have been killed. The UN believes there were 12,000 child soldiers involved in the conflict there last year. Upwards of 2 million people have been displaced, and an estimated 2.5 million South Sudanese are facing severe food shortages. Paul Cisco, VOA News.
Thanks, Paul, for that report. And before we begin our discussion, I am now joined by the former Vice President of South Sudan, Dr. Riek Machar, currently the chairman of the Sudan People's Liberation Movement in opposition. He joins us by telephone link-up from Addis Ababa. Good evening, Dr. Machar.
Good evening, Chaka.
How are you today?
Well, I'm okay. Physically, okay.
I see. Well, you've been fighting for over a year now, Dr. Machar, and there are a lot of people, frankly, who were hoping that you would meet the deadline of the talks, which was last week on Thursday, March 5th. Why didn't you sign on the deal?
Well, there was no agreement to be signed. There was no deal. I am disappointed like the rest of the South Sudanese people and also the rest of the world. So there was no deal on the table.
Are you suggesting that whatever you were supposed to append your signatures on was not something perhaps that reflected the fundamental root causes of the problems of South Sudan?
You know, from our viewpoint, there are three fundamental issues. The system of governance, we have suggested that we move from the current system to a federal system. On principle, there is agreement, but when we come to details, there is disagreement. As they usually say, the devil is in the details. The second issue is the security arrangements. As you know, the country is split after December 16th. The country is split politically. Even the security organs, the army, national security, the police, and the rest, they are split. Even the public service is split. So we did not see a deal that would correct this, that will give adequate security arrangements for all to be confident of. Number three, you know that the AU has refused to publish its report on the conflict in South Sudan because a commission was formed. The AU has not published or made public this report. Everybody has been asking for it to be made public, and because it would address the issues of accountability, justice, reconciliation, healing, and even institutional reform. All in all, we couldn't agree on these issues of accountability. So there was no deal on the table ready.
I have seen the leaked report of the African Union Commission, of course, which was led by former Nigerian President General Olusegun Obasanjo, retired but certainly not tired. And among other things, actually, it indicates that the report would like to see President Salva Kiir and Dr. Riek Machar stepping aside, not participating in the proposed, for example, transitional arrangement. Have you heard about that?
Yeah, I heard about that. My concern is, what have I done wrong? I am the victim. I am the aggrieved. The person who planned the massacre in Juba is President Salva Kiir. So if his punishment is to ensure that he does not participate in the transitional government of national unity, what is my fault there? I was chased away. The world proved that there was no coup as claimed by the government, and a massacre was committed in Juba by the president using his own troops, and I believe Ambassador Garang knows about it.
To what extent, Dr. Riek, would you say you have confidence in IGAD, the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, as a neutral or non-partisan mediator in as far as the talks are concerned?
Well, I don't think that IGAD is non-partisan or neutral. You know that Uganda is part of the talks at the level of the summit, and Uganda is part of the conflict, is fighting all over South Sudan, starting from Equatoria, Greater Upper Nile now, Greater Bahar Ghazal. It's part of the war, and it is also part of the resolution of the conflict. So you can't describe it as a neutral body. That is IGAD. But we have accepted to negotiate under such a system, yes.
How do you respond to some who will say that peace talks between President Salva Kiir and Dr. Riek Machar really is like a couple planning a political marriage while concentrating on political divorce?
Well, you see, I have told you the fundamental issues which we would like to address, and they are real. One, this is system of governance. We have proposed federalism. They have accepted it in principle, but we differ in the details. We have also said we need to address the security issues by having adequate security arrangements. This is important for all the people in South Sudan. And then the accountability agenda. I think this if we reach an agreement on these three issues and the other procedural issues related to them, we should strike a deal. But we haven't.
Again, looking at the AU Commission leaked report, which obviously has not been released publicly, it would seem that the mediators, in fact, had done their job, and they had actually put out a deal that probably you and a lot of others could have lived with, but apparently the deal was changed by the heads of IGAD. I'm talking about the presidents and the Prime Minister of Ethiopia. Have you heard about that?
Well, you know, one of the difficulties in the IGAD mediation is the complication which comes in when a summit is called. They had called several summits, and we find ourselves negotiating with the heads of state and government at every summit, and at most of the time, and specifically on the 25th of August, this was the case when even the mediators were sidelined. So we have problems.
So what do you sincerely finally think that must happen in order for you to stop and end the fighting so that the ordinary people of South Sudan, in fact the vast majority of South Sudanese, can again begin to live their lives in peace and harmony? Dr. Riak.
We want to strike a peace agreement still under this imperfect mediation system, the IGAD, but we know that the talks collapsed, and there was a declaration that this mechanism did not yield fruits, but a new mechanism will be introduced. So we're waiting for the new mechanism so that we can resume the talks.
I see. Well, we're going to have to stop right there. I would like to thank Dr. Riek Machar, chairman of the Sudan People's Liberation Movement in opposition, who joined us on the telephone link-up from Addis Ababa. We will now pause for a short break, and would like to remind you that Straight Talk Africa is now on the social networking website Twitter, and we are tweeting live. Follow us at VOA Shaka. That's VOA Shaka, and join in on today's discussion with your questions and comments. Don't forget to use the hashtag VOA South Sudan. And we are still on Facebook. Just enter the keywords Straight Talk Africa. Become a fan and connect with other friends of the Voice of America. We'll be right back with you, so please don't go away.
The conflict in South Sudan started in December 2013 when Salva Kiir, from the ethnic Dinka group, fired then Vice President Riek Machar, an ethnic Noor, and accused him of plotting to overthrow the regime. Machar denied the allegations and accused Kiir of carrying out violent purges. The accusations sparked violence among the two ethnic groups, causing the death of thousands and leaving millions displaced. Several NGOs have accused both warring sides of committing crimes against humanity, including mutilation, rape, and extrajudicial executions. President Kiir has warned that the country is at risk of famine if the violence continues.
As Nigeria heads to the polls March 28th, Voice of America reporters head to the field, covering the election campaigns and the issues for Nigeria and all of Africa. Turn to Voice of America for the facts. Nigeria Decides 2015. What happens there matters throughout Africa. VOA has the largest team of international journalists in Nigeria and surrounding countries, counting down to the March 28th election and beyond. VOA's Nigeria Decides 2015 coverage is on radio with Daybreak Africa, Africa News Tonight, and Nightline Africa. On television with Africa 54 and Straight Talk Africa. And stay on top online. Go to voanews.com. Special Nigeria Decides 2015 coverage is underway now. A commitment to Africa from Voice of America.
This is Straight Talk Africa on the Voice of America. What is your opinion about today's topic? Call us at 202-619-3111. U.S. country code 1. When you call, remember the following. Ask only one question. Keep your comment brief. And turn down the volume on your radio or television. Now let's return to Straight Talk Africa.
Thank you very much, Esther Gizui. And today we are talking about the implications of the stalled South Sudan peace talks in Addis Ababa, the seat of the African Union. Our distinguished guests are Garang Diing Akuong, the South Sudanese ambassador to the United States, and John Tanza Mabusu, managing editor and host of South Sudan in Focus, the Voice of America 30-minute weekday English language radio internet broadcast, which airs Monday through Friday at 7:30 p.m. East African time. Once again, my fellow East Africans, you're most welcome to Straight Talk Africa.
Thank you.
You're most welcome. Garang, it's been a very, very long time since you used to follow Straight Talk Africa. How do you feel now that you are on the set yourself?
Lastly, I'm on the program.
Terrific.
I've been a fan of the program since 90s.
Really?
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I have to say that the feeling is mutual. I'm glad that we could actually have you in the studio. You just heard your compatriot, a former, of course, vice president of your country, talk about how, in fact, there was no deal. Come Thursday, there was no deal worth signing, really. How do you react to that, Mr. Ambassador?
Yeah, thank you very much. My reaction would be that we are all disappointed that there was no deal in Addis Ababa.
Mm-hmm.
But since we are still talking, we are hoping that one day we'll arrive to a deal. But let me also comment on the points raised by Dr. Riek Machar. I and Dr. Riek Machar have been in this government since 2010.
Mm-hmm.
So we know what happened in the government. We know what happened in the time leading to the crisis.
Yes.
Dr. Machar will recall that in March 2013, he and Group 11 called for a meeting in the presidency where they called the president. He himself was there. Pagan was there. Deng Alor was there. And they called for the president to step down. That was way, way back before the crisis.
Was that the famous press conference?
Not. I'm coming to that. That was on third. Not third. That was in March 2013. Then, in that meeting, they called the president to step down, and each one of them expressed his desire and to lead the South.
Yes.
The president told them that he didn't have any problem, but let us go back to our institutions, which are the SPLA, the SPLM, Congress, and then the people of South Sudan. That was the meeting of March. In July the 4th, Dr. Riek Machar gave interview to Reuters, in which, this is the Reuters reporter, the deputy leader of a newly independent South Sudan has issued a veiled warning to the country's Western-backed president, Salva Kiir, telling him to stand down and vowing to replace him before or after the election by 2015.
Right.
This was July, before the crisis.
This is 2013?
This was 2013.
Yeah, we know,
that was the build-up to the Victoria coup. Then, in December
15.
Yeah, when the president was in France, himself and others went to SPLM headquarters and called the president by all names.
Right.
He's a dictator,
Right.
he's a failure, and all
Right.
this. Then what do anybody expect from a leader to do?
I hear what you're saying, Mr.
Victoria
Ambassador.
cannot claim that he's innocent when he has been building up for the climax of 2015.
In other words, it really takes two to tango.
Yes.
What do you think about this, John? We obviously cannot deny the fact that some of these things occurred, but what about the fact that perhaps we should in fact compare those things that occurred then to, frankly, the suffering that your cousins, your mothers, your fathers, your aunts are going through?
Well, Shaka, before the conflict developed to what it is right now, it was a disagreement within the political party, the ruling party.
Right.
Dr. Riek and some other members of the party like Pagana Moon.
Were those members of the political bureau?
Yes, the members of the political bureau came up and called for a convention because these are some of the party mechanism for, elections and reforms and democracy within the party. But this party convention was postponed several times. And then Dr. Riek and the rest of the other members of the political bureau reminded President Kiir that it's time for us to have this convention so that we can address some other party issues. And that is where the problem all started. And to come to your question about the suffering of the people, when I was in Addis, I spoke to several stakeholders, civil society groups, faith-based groups, and even the youth. When I asked them, how do people at home feel? And the answer is people are disappointed. They want an end to this fighting because they did not expect independent South Sudan to be an arena of fighting. They wanted to enjoy what they call the freedom that they have been fighting for. They want to enjoy the fruits of the freedom. And so the common sentiment from people at home is that this fighting must end.
How do you respond to some people, frankly, who have been saying that the only reason, for example, why South Sudan is an independent sovereign nation today is largely because at one time you had a uniting factor. You had a uniting factor, Khartoum, because you had, according to these reports, a very, very strong hatred of Khartoum, but that since you separated from Khartoum, there is what they call lack of a vision to change society into a viable democratic entity built on the idea of a common future.
Well, I will agree to some extent with those predictions because what South Sudan went through right after independence is a post-conflict scenario. When a country goes into conflict, after the conflict there are lots of issues that need to be addressed. There are issues of democracy, issues of nation building, issues of human resource, issues of distribution of wealth, and the list is just endless. And so right after independence, the post-conflict scenario was not handled the right way.
Right.
There was a scramble for positions, if you like. Everybody wants to be on the top seat. Everybody is struggling to secure a job in the government. In fact, in South Sudan, the government is the only employer. Most people want to work with the government. But the truth of the matter is, when the people of South Sudan were fighting the long war with Khartoum, of course, there were a lot of things that were swept under the carpet, postponed, if you like. They would say, let us finish with our common enemy first, and then we will come to address these issues. And these issues were prolonged for quite a long time, and that's why it erupted. For instance, it's an open secret that some communities in South Sudan don't coexist peacefully from time immemorial due to the nature of their social and socio-economic activities. For instance, take example of cattle keepers.
Pastoralists.
Yes, they don't see each other eye to eye. I mean,
with cultivators.
Yes.
But that's not unique to South Sudan because you have the same dynamics, for example, in Rwanda. You have the same dynamics in Burundi. You have the same dynamics, as a matter of fact, in parts of my country, Uganda.
Yeah, but the issue with South Sudan is there's been lack of institutions of governance that will address your issues. If you steal my property, I can go to court and you should be taken to court. But the courts in South Sudan are compromised. In fact, a lot of analysts are saying the judiciary is partisan. So where do you go? Which court do you go to, bring your cases there in case your animal is stolen? So in the absence of a system, people then take refuge in their community for protection because they think where they are, their brothers and sisters will rally behind them to fight whoever wants to come and attack them or take their property. And that's why the situation of South Sudan is a little bit peculiar.
In fact, some observers have gone to the extent of saying that the only thing that the government in Juba has accomplished so far is basically institutionalizing corruption and impunity. Is that something you'd like to respond to, Mr. Ambassador?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, let me say that the issues you have raised and my friend here has responded to are issues of post-independence, as he said, and especially countries that emerged from wars.
Right.
Our independence was not peaceful independence. It came through wars.
Certainly not, yeah.
So there were a lot of infrastructures that were destroyed.
Yes.
Schools were destroyed, roads were destroyed, hospitals were destroyed. So we were trying to rebuild the country.
Can we come a little bit back to that later because time is not our best ally?
Yeah.
You're tuned into Straight Talk Africa. We'll have more of a discussion in a moment. But first, here is Mariama Jaro. Take it away, Mariama.
Well, thanks, Shaka. Still to come, we'll reveal some of the outstanding and fantastic feedback we've received from our audience through social media from across the African continent. But now, here is our letter of the week. Omunua Okugbo from Abuja in Nigeria writes, many steps can and should be taken to bring peace and prosperity to South Sudan. President Salva Kiir and opposition leader Riek Machar should de-emphasize fame, power, money, and stress the importance of developing South Sudan. The country's officials should now craft a roadmap to development that is acceptable to all ethnic and religious groups in the country. The development of South Sudan is what matters most, and not who occupies the State House. Finally, the African Union should take the initiative and play a mediatory role in South Sudan's peace process.
We are able to touch on things that are important to people on an everyday basis. We hope that our viewers are getting inspired when they watch our show. They're getting a view of the world from a different perspective, things that perhaps are not in their immediate vicinity. Today, I could put in on the show something that is a little different, a little unique, and this gives me that inspiration to come to work.
This is Straight Talk Africa on the Voice of America. Call us now with your questions and comments. The number 202-619-3111. And the U.S. country code is 1. Call direct and we'll call you right back. Remember to keep your questions brief. Now back to Straight Talk Africa.
Thank you very much, Esther Gizu, and welcome back to Straight Talk Africa, live from Washington. Once again, it's time to bring in my colleague and social media reporter, Mariama. Take it away again, Mariama.
Well, thanks, Shaka. Talks to end 15 months of conflict in South Sudan are at a standstill after discussions collapsed last Friday without an agreement, violating a March 5th deadline imposed earlier by mediators. It was the latest blow to peace efforts in the political dispute between President Salva Kiir and his former Vice President, Riek Machar. Mediators say they could not persuade either side to make a meaningful compromise. Well, this leads us to our question of the week, asking what steps can be taken to end the continuous rivalry between President Salva Kiir and former Vice President and rebel leader Riek Machar. Well, first of all, thank you all for using our social media platforms to give us your thoughts. Let's begin with a comment from Michael Babu Duki from Kampala, Uganda, who writes, "The rivalry between President Salva Kiir and Riek Machar is just one of the latest manifestations of political greed by African leaders. The only real solution is for the two principals to exit the political stage in South Sudan and allow more citizen-leaning and development-oriented leaders to take the lead and move Africa's youngest nation forward." Well, another reminder that we are tweeting live today. Use the hashtag VOA South Sudan. And if you haven't yet, please follow us on Twitter. And speaking of it, let's go to a tweet from Achek Ibn Umar, who writes, "Number one, restore hope. Bold, painful, unilateral concessions by Kiir and Machar. And number two, appoint a high-profile personality as sole mediator." Well, let's look at another tweet from Lawrence Swider, who asked, "What is the current thinking about how to resolve the tensions over the disputed oil-rich region of Abyei?" Well, Shaka, Your Excellency, and my colleague John Tanza, you have the floor.
Well, what about that, Mr. Ambassador? Your reaction?
Yeah, thank you very much. I was saying that the government has accomplished a lot of things during this period, between 2010 and up to this moment.
Right.
First of all, the government of the President Salva Kiir has done a lot of things through difficult times. First of all, it was issue of the CPA implementation.
Right, the Comprehensive Peace Agreement.
Yes, and he has led us through that period. He has supervised over the CPA implementation. He has achieved the referendum. He has achieved the independence. These are things, that goals that we set during that time and we've achieved. We have opened the schools. We have built hospitals. We have opened roads. These are things that we have achieved. Corruption is there everywhere in this world. And the government is doing its best to minimize corruption. It has been an issue, and we have established an institution that deals with corruption. There is an institution for that. In the Constitution, we have addressed that.
The institutions might be there on paper, but in practice, do they in fact have the teeth that can bite?
Yeah, they have been given teeth in the new Constitution that they can sue. They can arrest, they can sue. Yeah, and they have been empowered by the Constitution.
I see.
That is something that we have done. So we need to fight it as a government and as a community.
I hear you. Yeah. Mariama, do you have any more feedback to share with the audience, please?
Absolutely. We'll move on to a posting from Joseph Makale in Lusaka, Zambia, who writes, "The solution to this kind of hostility lies in the ability of President Salva Kiir and Riek Machar to find peace in their hearts and room to forgive and tolerate each other. They must find space for compromise for the sake of their people." Well, let's look at another comment, this time from Mohamed Ahmed Mansour from Monrovia in Liberia, who says, "Only the people of South Sudan can stop the suffering of their people. Nobody else can do that. President Salva Kiir and Riek Machar should both cultivate a sense of compassion so they can come together and reconcile their differences. Both sides should stop the fighting and return to peaceful dialogue." Well, Shaka, a wide range of opinions here, but nevertheless compassionate to the South Sudanese people in general. And I think the earlier question had to do with the Abyei situation, that they wanted to find out what happened to that.
Very interesting, very interesting. Thank you very much, Mariama, for bringing us this week's audience reaction. Yeah, what about what you just heard, for example, John, especially the ambassador has in fact a reference to the CPA. There's no question that President Salva Kiir has been able to steer the country through the period of CPA, which was 2005 up to, was it 2011 when you got your independence, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, but what about the fact that when you read again the African Union Commission leaked report, it finds a lot of problems, in fact, with the CPA. It says the CPA, which of course is a brainchild really of the IGAD, countries and the Troika.
Yes.
The United States, the United Kingdom and Norway. That in fact it was faulty because it legitimized any group, for example, that had a gun and also introduced what they characterize as the rule of the gun as opposed to the rule of law.
The CPA had its own, shortfalls. A lot of commentators, political observers have said several times that the CPA was a negotiation between the SPLM and the National Congress Party, that's the ruling party in Sudan. The other political forces in South Sudan were sidelined. And so when SPLA got the legitimacy through the CPA to be the ruling party in South Sudan, it came with a lot of other problems. For instance, the SPLA came when they assumed power, they took over the parliament. 99% was SPLM. And so decisions of the parliament were based on party line as opposed to the interests of the country. And a lot of other political parties were making noise, but their efforts were not heard that much. For instance, Dr. Lama Kol got frustrated, and he formed his own party because he said, we cannot run the country like this. This is not what we fought for.
That is now, interesting because Lama Kol, of course, you should make reference to the fact that he was, in fact, the Sudanese Foreign Affairs Minister during the CPA, correct?
Indeed, he was.
Part of it.
But when he came to Juba, and he started making noise about certain issues that he sees not going right, and he formed his own party called the SPLM DC, SPLM Democratic Change.
Democratic Change.
Yes. Now,
democracy without Democrats.
Well, I will not comment on that. But let me come back to what His Excellency, the Ambassador.
President Salva Kiir, I remember interviewing him, in fact, in Pretoria, in the Pretoria Sheraton, and when I raised the issue of Lama Kol saying that the SPLM was undemocratic, he shot back to me and said, Shaka, between me and Lama Kol, who is a Shuruk prince, who is more democratic than the other?
Yeah, I think the issue of CPA was, to reference the league report, CPA was achieved through the barrel of guns.
Yes.
And the issue of the guns that they referred to, the guns were there to protect the CPA.
Yes.
Otherwise, we would have not arrived at the point that we had the referendum.
Correct.
So, is Sudan better now without South? Or if we go back to Sudan, will we be much better, or will Sudan be better? I don't think so. So this is the issue. The issue of the SPLM domination of the parliament. We had elections where everybody participated. And actually, Lama Kol formed his democratic forum before the elections. And he came to the elections and he won 4 seats in the parliament. He's now having his opposition party now in parliament.
We'll come to that issue because
so decision at the parliament will arrive by parliament because of democratic process. Parliament is representative of the people.
We'll come back to that later because Lama Kol, of course, will tell you that what you call elections, in his view, are perhaps selections.
But he participated and he won 4 seats.
We'll come back to that.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mariama, for bringing us this week's audience reaction.
Well, that will do it for today's social media segment. Thanks to our guests for chipping in. I hope they'll be able to address the audience's concerns and clarify certain things about the current situation. And one more thanks to Your Excellency, of course, the newest South Sudanese ambassador to the United States, whom I had the pleasure of sitting down and doing an interview with last week before the March 5th mediation deadline. Well, just a reminder that we appreciate all the feedback, whether it's in social media form or using other means to communicate to us. Please, please keep them coming. And if you are a new fan, just drop us a line at africatv@voanews.com. Once again, our email address is africatv@voanews.com. Or post your comment on our Facebook page Just enter the keywords Straight Talk Africa. Be sure to visit us online at voaafrica.com, or you can join our YouTube channel. Just subscribe to VOA TV to Africa. And don't forget to follow us on Twitter at VOA Shaka. Now, let's take a look at what's on tap for next week's program. Next week on Straight Talk Africa, land reform. Despite the end of colonialism rule and apartheid, vast amounts of land in Zimbabwe and South Africa and other regions on the continent are not being redistributed fairly and efficiently. We'll discuss this issue and more next week right here on Straight Talk Africa.
Welcome back. We're talking about the implications of the stalled South Sudan peace talks in the Ethiopian capital, Addis Ababa. Garang Diing Akuong, the South Sudanese ambassador to the United States, and John Tanza Mabusu, managing editor and host of Voice of America's South Sudan in Focus. Well, I have to say that Garang and John, once again, I'm profoundly honored and exceedingly humbled to have the opportunity to host the two of you on Straight Talk Africa.
Thank you. Thanks, Chaka.
You're most welcome, sirs. Well, we're talking again about the CPA. We're talking about democracy, all I call it in South Sudan. Of course, democracy is a process. It's neither an incident nor an event. So we can give you the benefit of the doubt. But what about some who say, frankly, that when you look at these peace talks that have been going on, that perhaps you can't expect what someone has characterized as a quick fix of power sharing agreement, really, because it simply doesn't work. Because this person, in fact, says, when you look at the chemistry between the two principals, that there is really no chemistry. That they have sat in rooms and stuff like that, but they spend a lot of time trying to avoid each other, really. You've been to Addis Ababa?
Yes, I came from Addis 4 days ago, and I have seen that. I've seen a bit of that. But when I spoke to delegates from the two groups, I asked one question. When President Kiir and rebel leader Riek Machar are sitting face to face there, do they talk to each other? They told me no, when they are there, it's normal. They talk to each other, they make jokes. But when it comes to the issues that brought them together, they don't see each other eye to eye.
They don't.
They don't see each other eye to eye because you see, there is a compatible goal that these two leaders are striving to achieve.
Which
and
is?
It is the seat.
The seat, the presidency.
The presidency.
But what about perhaps the perceived pressure from their supporters, really?
Well, what I saw in Addis was that most of these delegates who came from the two sides have no power to decide. They have to wait for the principals to look at their recommendations and pass it.
I see.
So if there is pressure from the supporters, then these supporters ought to have been given the powers to really, make a final conclusion. And
I hate to disappoint you, my colleague John, because time happens not to be our best ally right now. A reminder that you are tuned into Straight Talk Africa. To participate in our discussion, please call us at 202-619-3111. US country code is 1. We'll continue our discussion in a moment, so please don't go away.
Nearly $2 billion are needed to assist the conflict victims and refugees. 4 million people are at risk of famine. Between 1.1 and 1.5 million people have been displaced. Almost 117,000 South Sudanese refugees have fled to Uganda since December. Nearly 102,000, or 87% of the refugees, are women and children. The International Crisis Group estimates that at least 50,000 people have been killed during the conflict.
Nigeria heads to the polls March 28th for a landmark election. What happens there matters throughout Africa. Turn to Voice of America for the facts. VOA reporters are in Nigeria and surrounding countries covering the campaigns and the issues and counting down to the March 28th election and beyond. Special Nigeria Decides 2015 coverage is underway now. a commitment to Africa from Voice of America.
If you like today's show, please write and tell us what you think or give us some suggestions. Be sure to tell us what station you're tuned into. Our address, Straight Talk Africa, Voice of America, 330 Independence Avenue Southwest, Washington, D.C. 20237 USA. Or send us an email at africatv@voanews.com. Log on to our website at voaafrica.com. Or post your comments on Facebook. Keywords Straight Talk Africa.
Esther Gidhui, thank you so much. Let me come to you, Mr. Ambassador. Of course, there is talk, frankly, about having African solutions to African problems. What happened?
Well, it is good in principle, but also as Africans, we have weaknesses in our institutions. Mm-hmm. And that's why we always run to our friends in the UN or in the West to help us to arrive to our problems. Mm. The current peace talks in Addis Ababa, I think they are failing, but they will succeed one day. Mm. From Dr. Riek's contribution, remains about three issues. Mm. If the government has accepted in principle the issue of the federalism, it has been accepted.
Why should that be a very difficult thing?
This is what we need to ask Dr. Riek, because the government has accepted it. If there are details have to be arrived at in a process, a very long process, and that will involve even constitution.
But Mr. Ambassador, really, you have to do something because let's face it, first of all, your country is very huge,
yes,
with very few people, incredible natural resources, really. You have oil, you have gold, you have uncultivated miles and miles of land. I've had the opportunity to fly over South Sudan, go to Wau, go to Jonglei, and all those places. Why can't you sit together and figure out the way forward?
Yes, the way forward has been clear. The government gave a lot of concessions. The president gave a lot of concessions. He conceded a lot of things to the rebels. But the rebels have been shifting the goalposts from time to time to different locations.
But the rebels also say that, in fact,
this is the problem we have. And now we need the third party to come with the third way.
It is very interesting that you say that, frankly, because you could be right, but at the same time, you also have the rebels, in fact, saying it is Juba shifting the goalposts.
That is not true.
And you are both South Sudanese.
That is not true. First of all, they said that they wanted the president out. When the international community told them that this is not possible, they said, okay, we need the prime minister. The president said, yes, okay, take prime minister. They said, no, we need first vice president. They said, we will make two vice presidents. They said, no. Now who's changing the goalpost now? It is the rebels.
Very interesting. I'm being told that we have to go to the lifeline of the show, which are the telephone callers. Good evening. Is it Benny from Uganda or Benis from Uganda? You're most welcome to Straight Talk Africa.
Good evening, Shaka, and the ambassador to the United States.
Hugely terrific. How are you today?
We are fairly okay, only that Uganda, in this northern part of the country, is very extremely hot.
Oh, really? Is that where you are?
Yeah, that is where I am.
Precisely where?
Lira town.
It used to be a beautiful place. I've been there a couple of times.
You should come again.
Oh, you're most welcome. You bet I'll be there. So what's your question, my brother?
Yeah, I just want to make a comment on the failure of the peace agreement to be signed by the two parties.
Uh-huh.
I just want to refer you, I am happy that you are quite calm with what happens in Africa, and more especially in this region. Mm-hmm. It is indeed good with killing most of our African continent and countries. Mm-hmm. Because most African leaders, if it is not them, then nobody else can do it.
Right.
We have in Africa only strong visionary men, only one Muzee, only one man who that can deliver, who calls the colleague the wolf. And it's not surprising that this is even the CPA has not delivered. Mm-hmm. I had seen the failure beginning from the IGAD. You know the leadership of IGAD.
Yes.
Before we go ahead to blame the African Union, you blame the IGAD. Look at the members of IGAD.
Why do you have to blame the IGAD? Are you suggesting that it may in fact not be part of a solution, but perhaps in fact part of the problem, if not the problem?
It could have been part of the solution, but they have become a very big mammoth of the problems in the CPA.
Specifically, who are you talking about now? Specifically, who are you talking about now? Because we know, for example, that your country is the only member of IGAD that I know has troops in South Sudan that are partisan, not bipartisan. They are partisan.
They are partisan. That is even my complaint. That is even my worry. All members of IGAD has not presented themselves to be partisan, but our own membership and as a country has determined itself to be partisan, and they are not even willing to pull out. We are talking about giving African solution to African problems.
But what about the argument? What about Kampala's argument, really, that if in fact the Ugandan army had not gone there to secure the airport in Juba and some other places, for example, in Bor, that there could probably have actually been a genocide there?
Yeah, it could have been there. It could have been there. It couldn't even have been there as well. Remember, these are the same community, and this same community would not even wish to cope to clandestinely kill the other tribe or the other ethnic group. I would not believe so.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I think your point is well made. Let me come to you, John, really. You know as well as I do that this lady, this great lady, Hilda Johnson, used to be the United Nations Secretary General Special Representative to South Sudan. She has written a very interesting book, and among other things, in that book, she in fact says that your country needs to be rebooted like a computer, that there are no quick fix, no deal will do it. And in fact, she is supported by the Troika ambassadors also. According to the leaked report again, in their first meeting with the Commission, they actually agreed with her. They wanted, for example, to make sure that the two principals step aside so that your country can begin anew. Why do you think somebody can begin really using a metaphor of a computer?
It's because the conflict in South Sudan is so complex in its nature. If you look at the fabric of the society, the conflict is embedded in the fabric. And so for you to address it, you need to remove the layers one by one and look at them carefully. What is happening in South Sudan is that, yes, for now, a lot of people have been burying the fact that this conflict has boiled down to ethnicity.
Ethnicity.
But
is that true?
When I went to Addis and asked the delegates and the civil society, they said, no, this is not an ethnic conflict. It is a political conflict. It is a conflict between two leaders who have disagreed from one party, and the issues of the disagreement are issues that affects everybody in the country. For instance, the lack of democracy. In South Sudan, I met a lot of journalists in Addis Ababa who told me that they self-censor themselves. They could not write what they want to write because they will be arrested. There is no freedom of speech. And so it boils down to democratization of the society.
Time is not our best ally. We have only 1 minute, Mr. Ambassador. I really want to ask you a very important question here. John mentioned the issue of ethnicity. You don't eat your ethnicity. I don't eat my ethnicity. It is only when I am in trouble sometimes, at least in the context of Africa, that I begin to mobilize the support of the people with whom we share that clanship. When I steal for myself. I am patriotic to my stomach, not to my ethnicity. So why should people be misled along those lines, really?
Yeah, this is the question we are asking ourselves. Why should the rebels mobilize themselves along ethnic line? And we government, we did not do that.
No, you can't say that. You know what happened in Juba?
The president came out twice after the conflict. He came out twice, and I was there in those two occasions. He said that if you are my supporter, don't kill anywhere.
I know he came later, but
if you are my supporter, don't kill anywhere.
But if you go at the date of the 16th and 17th and the 18th,
let me finish.
Unfortunately, time really is not my best ally. There's no democracy here. I have to go if they say I have to go. On that note, thanks to our distinguished guests, Garang Diing Akuong, the South Sudanese ambassador to the United States, John Tanza Mabusu, managing editor and host of Voice of America's South Sudan in Focus, and Dr. Riek Machar, chairman of the Sudan People's Liberation Movement in opposition. He joined us earlier via telephone link-up from the Ethiopian capital, Addis Ababa. Thanks to affiliate stations, along with our viewers and listeners, we thank you for tuning in. For many of our Voice of America radio affiliates, Learning English is coming up next, and tomorrow morning's Daybreak Africa with James Bate. On behalf of the Voice of America, thanks for tuning in to Straight Talk Africa. In the meantime, get better South Sudan and Africa, not bitter. And please remember to keep the African hopes alive.